Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Tanisha. I am an intern with National Sports Media Association, with High Point University. Today, I am joined by a longtime voice of the Brooklyn Nets, um, a staple of the NBA radio broadcasting. Chris, hi, how are you today?
Hi, Tenisha. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. So, I wanted to start from the background and get to know you a little bit better. And I wanted to ask, what first got you into sports broadcasting?
I was 10 years old. My dad gave me a tape recorder and just said, have fun with it. And my idea of fun, because I was such a sports fanatic as a kid, was to go into a room, put the game on the TV, turn the sound down, and call games into a tape recorder. So I guess that's how far back it goes. I just always, though, sports was such a huge part of my life. And then as I got a little older, I realized that I had a talent for communicating with people. And it just all kind of blended into one when I was in college. And I went to Fordham University, and they had a broadcasting coach there by the name of Marty Glickman, who is a legendary figure in sports broadcasting. I mean, he basically invented radio play-by-play for basketball. And I just knew that I had to just soak everything in that Marty would tell us. And to this day, it's still in my head when Marty tells us to consider the listener when I'm doing a broadcast. So um, it's just I don't remember when I didn't want to do this stuff. And I don't know if I really understood it can be a career until I met Marty and until I started learning the craft at Fordham, and then once it did, it was all I really envisioned myself doing with my life.
Okay, so you mentioned that you went to Fordham. What other experiences did you have that shaped your path to get you to where you are now?
Ooh, I mean, life. Everything shapes you for where you are now. I mean, anything you do along the way. You know, the I guess you could say the biggest thing for me was when I was 23 years old and I was diagnosed with muscular dystrophy. And that is something that you're out of college, you're just trying to make it in a business that's almost impossible to make it in, and then you're told you have a muscle wasting disease and there's no treatment and no cure, and you may end up in a wheelchair one day. And how do you still go about fulfilling your dreams with that hanging over you? And I don't know how to say that. How do you say that shapes your life? I don't, I mean, it just does. And everything I've done to sort of, I don't want to say overcome because you never overcome it, but to manage that, to battle through that. There are definitely things I wish I could have learned in a book, but I had to learn them. I had to learn them through life, and um, that's a part of who I am, and I think that sh has shaped my adult life.
Thank you so much for sharing. I like to ask that because I feel like a lot of people don't know who really is behind the microphone. They appreciate like the commentating and the moderating, but I feel like it's important to know who's actually speaking and who's moderating because the passion also you can sense and feel it 100 times more when you feel that someone is more serious behind what they do. Um, I want to ask another follow-up question for that. What was your first experience behind a microphone? Like, did that happen at Fordham University or was that later on in your career?
So the first time I ever broadcast a game or something over the air was at Fordham. Um, there were other times where I was, public speaking. I remember just being in grade school and speaking at mass, Catholic mass. That's when I first realized that this was something I liked doing. Like I think that was a moment where you stand up at a lectern and there's a room full of people and you have a microphone, and I think that's a you either love that or you don't. And I think I realized that I actually did get a rise out of that. Like I did, that did excite me. And I would then volunteer for it. And then when I got to high school, I started doing competitive speech and debate. So I really, I think that those are the moments where I understood that this is what I was kind of meant to do, communicating in some way. And I think everybody, it's the most important skill you can have in life is be able to communicate. To be able to stand in front of a room and communicate ideas is the most important thing I think you can do with any career path that you choose. And then when I was able to combine that love of communicating with people, the not having that fear of standing in front of a room and speaking publicly, and then combine that with my love of sports, which was always there. That if you can do that, if you can combine your passion with something you're good at, uh, that's the key to life, really.
So I want to transition a little bit. So we know you've been moderating and you've been the voice for the Brooklyn Nets for quite some time now. How has that been for you, like moving with them and growing with the franchise over time?
I'm very proud to receive these awards, and I'm getting the Kirk Gowdy Digital Media Award from the Basketball Hall of Fame this year, and I'm getting this award, and it's really it means a lot to me personally, but I'm equally as proud to represent the Nets franchise. I mean, I started when I was a 23, 24-year-old kid. What am I talking about? I started when I was right out of college. I was a 22-year-old kid, part-time, working out of the studio, producing their radio broadcasts, and to still be doing that, uh, 34 years later is is incredible. And I think whereas other people may have used the Nets as a stepping stone over the years, I've always been proud to represent the organization. And I've seen a lot. I've seen different ownership groups, management, GMs, coaches, players. I've seen so much over 3 decades. But to think that I've been a consistent voice there for so long, um, I'm just proud of it. I'm proud of the legacy I've built there. I'm proud of the association and all those people that have come through there, all the changes that have happened in management and ownership. Um, they've all been terrific in their own way. And I'm proud to represent the Nets in everything that I do and everything that I get.
So, obviously you've been with them for a while, as you mentioned, over 3 decades. How do you handle the pressure of the calling big moments live?
I mean, you live for big moments. I mean, you do your job for those big moments. I mean, there's you have to love the mundane in this business because there's very few big moments. Um, but you have to, there's an editor in your mind at all times, and you have to let your emotions show, but you have to be in complete control. You have to get excited, but at the same time, you have to be in your mind calm. There has to be a way of outwardly showing your emotion and how excited you are, but at the same time, have the presence of mind to slow it all down and really um, provide to the listener or the viewer what they need at that moment. So it's a real balancing act that's going on in your head. But the thing I love about my job is every time you show up at the arena, you never know, you may see something you've never seen before. And most big moments never happen the way you envision them in your mind. So you have to be prepared for anything. And I've had some really incredibly big moments, and I think about moments that I hope will happen in the future, but they're never going to go as you totally think. So you have to be ready for anything. I
Okay,
think, yeah.
That makes sense. So, what's one moment in your career with the Nets that still stands out to you now?
I mean, the very first year that I did this job as the play-by-play voice of the Nets, and people still say, "What's your most memorable game?" And I say it's a playoff game I did my very first season, and it was Game Five, decisive Game Five, Nets and Pacers, double overtime. Reggie Miller made a couple of shots to force, he forced the first overtime, he forced the second overtime. The Nets ended up winning the game and then made a run to the NBA Finals that year. So, but I end up doing two NBA Finals in a row for the Nets, but I don't think any of them happened without winning that game. And, it featured all my favorite guys to call, Jason Kidd and Kenyon Martin and Richard Jefferson and that whole group. So it was, there have been some other memorable games. I mean, Devin Harris hitting a half court shot that had to be reviewed because it didn't know if it came after the buzzer, and the game ends with the whole arena looking at the scores table, waiting for the official to make a call, or um, Joe Johnson hitting a game winner when the Nets are on a losing streak and turn their season around in Oklahoma City, or so many, Kevin Garnett. Well, I meant to say that's a Freudian slip there. Kevin Durant, um, Kevin Durant making that shot to force overtime in Game 7 against the Bucks, but his toe is on the line, and having the presence of mind to know that I didn't say it was a three or a two. Wait to see what the scoreboard said, and the Nets are so close to maybe even winning a championship that year, a toenail away. Um, that game always stood out in my head. Even the Game 5 when he had a 48 or 49 point triple double, one of the greatest performances I've ever witnessed in my life personally. So all these things, yeah, it's such great moments. I also had a in football. I had I call national games for Compass Media Networks, and a couple of years ago I had a Hail Mary with Jaden Daniels for the Washington Commanders to beat the Chicago Bears. Um, and that was a pretty amazing to call a Hail Mary to win a football game. Like that doesn't happen a lot. So that was pretty memorable as well.
Okay, so sports media and as we all know has changed a lot, especially with like social media and digital platforms and streaming with ESPN and Disney Plus also. How has that impacted the way how you approach your role now in 2026?
I think there's a couple of things there. I'd be disingenuous if I said it didn't come to mind, that I just do the job the way I've always done the job. I think um, knowing that stuff is going to be replayed, you talk about big moments, knowing that those big moments are going to be replayed on social media, I think does put a different slant on how maybe you make those calls, how succinct you may be, knowing how they're going to be used, that you may try to get a lot of information into a succinct call so that it tells the story. If somebody uses a 20-second clip of your call, I think being more conscious of promoting your broadcast on social media, uh, trying to get your audience to be comfortable going to your stream and promoting your stream. These are all ways that are going to try to uh, just make yourself, you know, seem stay with the times and make sure that you're keeping up with all that. I think I think we're conscious of it. I think there's only so much you can do. In the end, you just have to call the game the way you call the game. But in the moment, you're not just thinking about how is it sounding to the person right now. You're thinking, how is this going to sound when people want to share it on social media? I think that's something that maybe didn't come into your head 10 years ago, but it does now.
So, how do you stay sharp and adaptable, or how do you stay adaptable in a fast-moving industry?
You're just never too old to reinvent yourself. I think if you say, well, I'm too old to be uh, participating in social media, that's wrong. It doesn't matter what generation you came from. You have to embrace what's happening now. And my job has always been to communicate. And sometimes that may just come in a different form. Sometimes you realize that some of the stuff allows you to be more creative and have fun with it. I think you have to embrace all of that. And I think it's staying um, current with how to use different technology and how to have fun with it. I think it's all, a lot of social media, just have fun with it, right? So communicating with your audience in a different way. I probably speak to more people now, my audience than I did before, because you'd have to run into them after a game or something, whereas now you can just be online talking with people. So I think it's just try to always stay on top of it. Never think that you're too old or that you don't have the ability to do it. Anybody can do anything. And even, the new technologies just embrace ways to how can I edit videos quicker? How can I edit audio quicker? How can I match video to audio? How can I get it out to more people? These are all things that I embrace even today and, in my mid 50s. So I'm not afraid of it. I enjoy it. And I think that you just got to stay on top of it.
Thank you. So what do you think separates a good day-by-day broadcaster from a great one?
Well, the fact you use the word day by day is, I think, important because, like I always tell young broadcasters, is like when it comes to taking a job or a certain job you have to do, what is your day to day going to be like? Like you have to enjoy that process. You have to enjoy the preparation. You have to enjoy the travel. You have to enjoy whatever it is that your day to day is, because that the game itself is just like a small portion of your day. So, um, embracing the process is the most important thing to being, say greats, good, good people in something, even athletes. Good athletes have the talent. The greats are the ones that can do it consistently. So I think always showing up. I always had that Joe DiMaggio line in my head. I never know. Joe DiMaggio used to say, "I give it my all every time I'm out there because I never know if somebody out there seeing me for the first time." So you always think, all right, somebody out there could be listening to me for the first time. Somebody could be making up their opinion of me on the first 30 seconds of ever hearing me. So I have to make sure that I'm focused, that I'm prepared for every second that I'm on the air. And that is part of the preparation, the travel, all that is it's really important to be consistent and to give your best effort all the time because you never know when somebody's tuning in for the first time.
Thank you. So as you already shared a lot of wonderful insight, but for someone like me or others that are trying to break into sports broadcasting, what advice would you give them for current day by day now?
There's really no blueprint to success in this business. The only constant is your talent, and you have to constantly be working on your talent, your skill, whatever you think that may be. You have to constantly be trying to get better so that when you do get an opportunity, you're ready for it. A lot of it is sometimes a conversation you may have leads you to a position that's open that you didn't know about. There's so many different paths to success. So just constantly putting yourself out there to be in a position where you can seize an opportunity when you get it. But the only thing you can control really is how good you are. And as long as you do that, then you're ready when the opportunity arises. I would say it doesn't matter what your major is. Um, it just matters, are how good a communicator are you? How well-rounded are you? How knowledgeable you are on your subject, but on everything, so that you can have a frame of reference. You could have things you can go to during your broadcast. You're a well-rounded person. What makes you interesting, right? Develop what makes you interesting. Our business is about informing and entertaining. And, are you an interesting person? Are you somebody that people want to listen to? Are you someone that people want to welcome you into their home, which is what you're doing when you turn on the radio or you turn on the TV? So those are all the things you can control. And then just keep your eyes open and keep moving forward for whatever opportunities may arise. And, unfortunately, in this business, sometimes it's not talent that wins out all the time. There's a lot of really talented people who are good enough to do a certain job, but you have to make your own luck sometimes and be in the right place at the right time. But the only control thing you have control is your talent and how good you are. And that's what you have to make sure you're ready for.
So, as we're building this talent, other than communication and knowing how to talk with people, what are some other things that you think young broadcasters should start practicing or start working repetitive on?
Well, I think they're communicating with the audience is what it's all about. I mean, there's nothing else. I mean, there are things I think you have to have a good understanding of what everybody's going through that's involved in your broadcast. Yeah, I think it's important to work if you would be in TV, work as a runner, work as somebody that's been in the truck, just if you're on radio, be a producer, a board op, just so you know what's involved in everything that goes on around your ability to communicate. And I also think just be the kind of person that you would want to work with, so those interpersonal connections you make with people, like just I think, like I said before, there's a lot of really good young talented people. So what separates you? Are you the kind of person that people want to work with? Someone can have all the talent in the world. If they're difficult to work with, or they're not fun to work with, um, they're not going to get jobs. Or they're not going to, I shouldn't say they're going to get jobs. The talent will get them the job. They won't keep the job. Um, I like to think there's a reason I've been with the Nets for 3 decades is because I'm somebody that's really good to work with. And I take pride in that. And I think that that's a skill that if you don't have that, you need to work on. And so those, I guess those would be things that I would say. But again, it all comes back to communication, and how you are on the air is often how you are off the air. So if you're fun to hang out with off the air, you're probably going to be fun to hang out with on the air. But, how you communicate with people is a huge thing. Yeah, that's what I would say.
Thank you so much, Chris. I honestly have no more questions. You provided me a lot of insight and answered honestly everything that I did have. Is there anything else that you would like to share?
You tell me. I'm good. Whenever you, whenever you, I could talk for hours. So I don't think we have time for that. But yeah, I mean, if there's anything that still stands out for you, let me know.
Oh, thank you so much. I'll be sure to follow up. Is there anywhere that people can connect with you on social media if they're interested?
Yeah, at Carrino, well, at Chris Carrino on usually Twitter and Instagram is when I'm on. A little bit of TikTok sometimes if I'm just feeling creative. Um, I'm an ambassador for the wheelchair company that I use called Pride Mobility. So I do a lot of things online that are around me using my wheelchair or things I do with that. Like, so that's where that comes from. And then my foundation, the Chris Carrino Foundation for FSHD, is at Carrino FSHD to find out about events and things that we have going on. So appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Have a good rest of your day.
Thanks, Tenisha. Now, is this do you have anything to do with the event or